moving ahead, gunshots rang out during the sixth inning of the Nationals game over the weekend. The shooting happened outside the stadium and injured 3 more people, including 1 fan. Here's a joint statement from D.C. Mayor Mario Bowser and the Washington Nationals. Quote, "We stand together against senseless acts of gun violence in the city we love. Gun violence, no matter where it occurs in our city, is unacceptable and will not be tolerated." Now, D.C. police are asking for the public's help in identifying this vehicle believed to be connected to the shooting. Take a look at that there. Joining us now to discuss retired Navy SEAL and former FBI agent Jonathan Gillum. Jonathan, thank you. She's also the author of the book Sheep No More. Also with us is Chicago conservative radio host Charles Butler. Here's what the D.C. Police Union tweeted after the shooting. "Welcome to Washington, D.C., where violent crime permeates everything. It is a tragedy that elected officials won't let us do our jobs." Your thoughts on the statement by Mayor Bowser and the Washington Nationals blaming guns? I'll start with you. What do you make of this? Number one, it seems like we've got a little bit of friction here between law enforcement and also the elected officials. This seems pretty abnormal here.
You starting with me?
Yes.
Okay. I think this is a great contrast between what the mayor said and what the police union said. The police union speaks the truth. They speak from the experience that they face on the street every single day. The mayor and the Nationals, both extremely woke individual and company. They're far left as Major League Baseball shows, and the mayor there. And what do they say? Well, just shooting is not going to be tolerated. This gun violence is not going to be tolerated. Well, obviously, according to their policies, they're not only tolerating it, they're making it possible to flourish in their cities. And an example of this would be, I ran special events for the FBI in New York City. Any major event or incident, I was the on-scene coordinator, and I did all the threat assessments leading up to those things. And I just can't believe that this was able to happen right outside of a major stadium where a special event was occurring. It just shows you that policy does enable criminals to do the things. There's not more criminals. They're just enabled now.
Well, Charles, I want to come to you because there's been this kind of suspension of reality where people think that they can defund police, reimagine police, and yet somehow all the crime that exists in the world will hit the pause button until they've created this reimagined policing. It seems insanity. Former President Trump called out the nation's rising crime rate himself after the shooting at National Park. He had a statement, "Crime in our country is escalating at a pace we've never seen before. At the same time, people are pouring through our borders totally unchecked. Jails in other countries are being emptied out onto the United States. This is far worse than anyone thought during the fake election." I mean, again, it just seems like whatever the issue is, Democrats seem to not want to acknowledge the fact that the policies they're implementing are leading to pain and suffering for the people who can least afford it.
That's very true. But I said last week that on Newsmax that the police aren't being allowed to do their job. That's just a fact. They're not being allowed to do their job. And if we turn them loose, they'll take care of these shootings, these criminals. But more importantly, I think one thing that we need to do, we need to take a page out of the South Africans book, both white and black South Africans, and that is to act as vigilantes and protect our own communities. That seems to be working in South Africa, where the looting was going on from the thugs and the criminals. And I think the same thing needs to happen here. I've been talking about these shootings since 2007 on national TV. I was the first public figure to call for the National Guard to come to Chicago, where I was castigated not only by Mayor Daley, but by Father Flager, Jesse Jackson, and others. Now everyone's calling for the National Guard or someone to come in. That's not going to do it. People in their communities need to take policing into their own hands because they know who these kids are who are driving through the neighborhood shooting. They're shooting in homes. I mean, this is not gang related. They're just arbitrarily shooting at people.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, maybe want to stick with you here because this weekend in Chicago, we saw close to 44 shootings. There was 11 murders, 56 shooting victims in Chicago, where it seems to be the epicenter of just absolute moral decay and absolute just despair. How do we truly get a hold on this when you have a mayor that is effectively inept, you have a White House that doesn't seem to want to acknowledge the problem, and trapped in the middle are poor black people who are doing the dying at the expense of blind ideology?
I'd just like to say this. Liberalism seems to be related to a person's distance from the problem. You will never hear black people in these communities or brown people say, we want to defund the police. The politicians will say that. They will, and when I've confronted politicians about why they're not doing more to put criminals in jail, the first thing they say is, we'd be incarcerating more black men. And I said, if they're criminals, put them in jail. We have a lot of issues that are going on, and black people need to look at themselves. We need to look at our own communities. This is not a white man's problem. This is a black community problem. These black community leaders or whatnot, and black people in the community, they don't need to be led. They need to organize. They need to get out on these streets and defend their children and defend their property. That's the American way.
Jonathan, I want to give you the last word here because, again, this is not a problem that's just in Chicago or just in New York. I mean, we've seen this in everywhere from Portland, Oregon, to Banks, Oregon. We've seen crime escalate here in response to these defund police efforts. How many people are going to have to die for people on the left to recognize that the consequences are too high to bear for us trying to run a social experiment on the lives of the American people?
As many people as it takes for the Democrat Party to fully carry out their agenda. That's really the reality. I love what Charles said because so many people won't talk about the black community, the inner city. And I've been all over this nation. And it's if you go from state to state in the big cities, the inner city is always black. And I don't think that that is without design because majority of these places, they're Democrat ran, and this is where the violence is. This is where the gangs are. This is where people are told you don't have hope or there is no future for you. And no one is building up these communities. And when it comes to stopping this, instead of using the word vigilantism, I would say it's time for Americans to stand together and step forward. And that is an American problem, not just a black problem. It is an American problem. And the virus that really is killing this nation is not COVID. It's the Democrat Party, the Communist Socialist Movement, and where it's spreading, the mass spreading areas is the inner city. And it infects everyone because the further we go in degradation of the inner city, the more it's going to affect the rest of the nation.
Well said.
Absolutely. It is a plague that does not say contained. It's clearly not going to be Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi standing on those corners, keeping our children safe, and it's not their children doing the dying. Our thanks to you, Jonathan and Charles. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
You got it.